From the biggest moments
Can you believe it?
to gold medal championships,
Sidney Crosby, the golden goal!
it's your update on Canada's game. You're listening to the True North Ice podcast with Jacob Ewing and Caleb Schneider. Hello and welcome back to the True North Ice podcast, where we talk all things Hockey Canada and everything Canadian hockey related. As always, we're your hosts. My name is Jacob Ewing, joined alongside Caleb Schneider. And we have a third guest today. Special guest, hockey content creator, international hockey enthusiast. If you've been around searching on YouTube, looking for some recaps, you've definitely come across his channel. It's Parker McLean of On the Fly. Parker, thanks for joining us today, man. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Glad to be talking a little international hockey on a little bit more of a sad note, I guess, from both the men's and women's teams coming off a bit of a disappointing run, but thrilled to be talking some hockey and glad to be on. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, it's crazy. Olympics are done, but we got NHL going right now. It's it's a great time to be a hockey fan, I'll say the least. But Parker, I do want to ask. I see a ton of jerseys. You got 3 behind you there now, and I've seen the whole whack on your videos. How many jerseys do you have, and are they all just international, or do you got some club teams in there too?
Yeah, the collection has been steadily growing, and so I think we're up over 14 by now.
There you go.
And so the 14 internationals, I got a few Bruins ones as well.
Okay.
The jersey collection has certainly been growing.
Oh, yeah. What's your top one? Like, do you have a favorite? Is it a Canadian one, or is it one of the non-Canadian ones?
I feel like it's the classic 2010.
Oh, yeah.
The reds and the whites. For me, those are the best Canada jerseys of all time. I'm sure you guys might agree with that.
I agree personally. I don't know about you.
But
I'm a big fan of the obviously the red with the Hockey Canada skate logo, and then I got the black with the maple leafs up top. I don't know if you could remember what I'm talking about. That's my favorite. Just gives me World Junior vibes. So actually, we'll stay on the jersey talk. I'm gonna give you another quick question. Me and Caleb did a podcast at the beginning of the Olympics when they announced the current jerseys for what they wore in 2026 at Milano Cortina. What were your thoughts on the jersey they used this year?
For Canada ones?
Yeah, the Canada ones. Yeah, we went to it. We had a very detailed conversation about it.
I'll be honest. I strongly dislike the black leaf in the middle. I have said that numerous times, and I will continue to say that. It is awful, and I don't know why they continue to go with it. Bring back the white maple leaf. Bring back the red maple leaf. Yeah. You can put black on the rest of it, just don't make it the primary leaf color because it looks terrible.
It does, yes. We got a lot of hate, I feel like, from our comments saying like that's I agree 100%, and I feel like a lot of people disagreed with us, which I think is insane. I think the white ones, like the away ones with the red leaf, was their best one, clearly. I think if they just fixed up the back and had the stripes figured out, that would have been a great jersey. And then the home one just was ugly though. The black on the red was just brutal in my opinion. Yeah, with the white as well. Yeah.
My favorite part of it was they even put the white lettering on the back this year after not being able to see it at the last Olympic run. So
for sure.
They almost got there. They were this close,
they were
but not quite there.
Yeah, maybe 2030 is the year. We'll have to wait and find out, I guess. So that's what it.
Well, we'll figure it out. Well, we got World Cup too, so
that's true.
There's still some things in the works, but. Parker, we'll just get right into it.
Sure, let's do it. Yeah.
For the men's side, what was your overall thoughts heading into the tournament for this team? Where do you think they're going to finish, and did they have a liability, or what was your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me coming into the tournament, I had Canada at number 2. I know a lot of people had them at number 1. I had them behind the U.S. You kind of look at 4 nations, just how close that tournament really was, and you go the game in Montreal, where, of course, the U.S. came out on top and really outplayed the Canadians in that game. You follow it up in Boston, where I would say the game could have went either way. It was one of those coin flip games, and fairly similar to what we saw, of course, in the eventual final gold medal rematch here in Milano. But you look at it coming in, right? The Americans add Tage Thompson, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy. The Canadians add basically Macklin Celebrini. And I think that for me wasn't enough to say, after what we saw at 4 Nations, that the needle was going to all of a sudden move into Canada's favor. And so the additions, the U.S. got a reinforced blue line. We saw that in the gold medal game. The goaltending advantage went to the U.S. We saw that in the gold medal game. And then the forwards, where the top 6 for Canada was better than the U.S.'s. But as far as the depth went, the farther down you went, the better the U.S. got. And so for me, the slight edge did go to the U.S., and we ended up taking them actually by the score of 2-1 in overtime. Going into the tournament, and unfortunately, my predictions came true.
Wow, that's nails right there. It's a pretty good call. Wow.
I mean, that's a perfect call, right? You can't get much better than that. We'll stay on the topic of your thoughts going into the tournament. So before, me and Caleb had a very spirited conversation about who should be the starting goalie. And I was on the train of being Jordan Binnington despite his numbers this year in the NHL just because he's proven on international stage. And Caleb was on the topic of Logan Thompson because obviously he's been a stud for the Washington Capitals. What were your thoughts about the number one goalie going into the tournament?
For me, I thought, and what also kind of was the expectation, was that going into the tournament, Binnington would get the start. And there's a reason why he was on the team. If he wasn't on the team, he wouldn't play. There's no reason for him to come and be the third string goaltender because there are better third string goaltenders. So he was always going to get that first start. Now, where I thought it was going to eventually transition to is Binnington was going to play himself out of a role in that opening game against the Czechs. And what we saw was quite the opposite. And I think in many ways he continued to earn his ice time as the tournament went onward. And big time Binnington plays in specific games in that kind of manner. And we saw that throughout this tournament. And it's also why that game against the U.S. in the finals was as close as it was. And it's crazy to think, but you put Logan Thompson in that game, it's no guarantee he makes the same saves that Binnington does, and that game remains close into overtime.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're more on my side thinking Binnington would lose than that. But, I mean, I would have personally just let Thompson.
You didn't even want him to go.
No, I didn't want him to go.
That's insane. I thought that was insanity going in.
I understand why he went, and I knew he was going to go, but, like, just, man, and still, I mean, he had a decent tournament, but, like, you even look at a little bit of a hockey analytics here. If you look at the goals saved above average, Hellebuck has a 5.92. And then you've got Thompson out of 117 and Hellebuck at a .48, so not even a half a goal. So Thompson, just by goals saved above average, is way higher. It's pretty much like goals saved above expected.
Yeah,
it's the same thing, just average. It's the hockey stats instead of the money puck. But I mean, technically on that stat, Jordan Binnington was worse than Logan Thompson from 4 games compared to 1.
Okay, I guess so. If you really want to bring that pity stat in here.
Stat pad there.
You really want to get your side of the argument, some sort of backing.
I'm just saying, Logan Thompson was better in 1 game.
Yeah. Parker mentioned the opening game about with Czechia, how Binnington had a really solid game. We'll start with that game. Obviously, we're going to go through the whole tournament today. We'll kind of go game by game, maybe skip over a couple that were kind of just dominated by Canada. But definitely right out the gates, I mean, shots were pretty even through 2 periods. Canada did come out with a victory 5-0. Parker, what were your thoughts on this opening game and facing a decently strong Czech team?
I'll be honest, I thought that was the worst the Czechs played all tournament long. And they didn't look all that good against the Canadian team, and the Canadians surprised me in that game. Coming into the tournament, I wasn't sure how the kind of constructed lines that didn't look very right were going to end up playing out, and it looked really good early in the tournament. And for me, that was kind of that first domino to fall of, okay, the goaltending question has been answered. The forward situation has been answered. The defense looked good enough. That question's been answered. And I think for me, that was kind of that first domino to fall, that it was like, okay, this Canadian team is on the right track to get where they need to be. And then the Czechs, who in my eyes were kind of that dark horse contender, almost fell by the wayside in that game. And I was really disappointed in many ways to see how poorly they actually played, because the game in that overtime or that quarterfinal game, which I'm sure we'll get to, I thought that was a more expected result than that preliminary round game. I thought that the game going to overtime was more expected than Canada blowing out the Czechs, because the Czech team, we've seen it at all the World Junior tournaments time after time after time, but it's the way that they play, it's the structure that they work with. It causes problems for these North American teams, and we saw that in the eventual quarterfinal rematch. But the Czechs didn't have the goaltending in that game. The Czechs didn't have their offensive ability. They stacked up the one line. That one line got shut down. And in the end, Canada walked all over them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it looked like heading into that game, Czechia was going to be a one line kind of team, and they had Hurdle up there in that top 1C. He obviously he had a horrible tournament, got bumped down to like that 3C. They were much better. I think the fact that Roman Chervenka, who's played with Pasternak in many of those world championships, finally the 40-year-old captain somehow gets those two guys going, and Nachas and Pasternak, that really helped them heading into that second game. That's why I think it also was much closer. They didn't have it all figured out. But no, I think really the lines were just, on Czechia's side, were very interesting. They just felt very discombobulated, where Canada, on the other hand, they looked like they were a complete team. Would you say, like, after that 5-0 game, was there like no doubts in your mind that Canada was going to go gold, at least for sure gold medal game? Like,
it's a fair question. I'll be honest and say that they moved up to my number 1 seed.
Wow.
I think it was about, it wasn't after the Czech game, would have been after that Swiss game. And even the Swiss game, I wasn't overly high on them for, but I thought that a lot of those questions coming into the tournament had been answered, and combined with the play of the US as well was kind of that contributing factor. But the game between the Czechs, even on the Czech side too, but for Canada, I thought that they were really good in that preliminary round, and then the rest of the competition kind of caught up to them. And the Swiss didn't play all that well. They had a good game. They weren't able to find those finishing chances. The Czechs had a really good. They played okay. They didn't play great. They didn't look all that good on the ice, but their structure was still developing, and you saw that towards the end of the game. It started to get a little bit better as it went onward. The French game, that game was a wash from basically the very start, and then the competition caught up, right? And we saw that in the quarters, we saw that in the semis, and of course saw it for gold.
Okay, I want to ask you a question about Canada's initial top line coming into the tournament, because Cale wasn't very high on Tom Wilson going into it, and I was actually pretty excited. I was very excited to have Tom Wilson on this team, and he ends up playing first line right wing for the first couple of games. What were you surprised when they announced these lines from the first practice and Tom Wilson's playing with the likes of Macklin Celebrini and Connor McDavid?
I think the bigger surprise was he was even dressed. But
yeah, exactly. I am on the exact same page. This is weird. I'm talking to somebody that actually understands. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just very over the top right now. It's awesome.
The fact that Tom Wilson was on this team from the start, and one of my favorite lines from this tournament was from a commentator. I think it was for gold, and he basically goes, "Yeah, I was really holding myself back because I didn't want to get suspended." And it's like, that's the problem when you bring a massive dude who's only there to cause problems and create big hits. Yes, he can play penalty kill. Yes, he can do stuff offensively. Yes, he's a good player. But the very premise of this tournament was it's a double IHF event. You don't know what the officiating is going to be like. And once again, this tournament definitely more on the lower end side of the calls, and I'd say it was definitely a better officiated tournament than I think most people had anticipated. It wasn't greatly officiated. I'm not saying it was, but as far as the heavy contact goes, compared to years past, I think it was much better. But then the question remains, and for a guy like Tom Wilson, is what value does he bring if he can't cause problems, he can't take big hits? And we kind of saw that, and they end up replacing him on that line with a little bit of a better player, I would say, and Nathan McKinnon. But he got, as these tournaments go onwards, you start to see guys like that fall down the line. Then you put out the goon line, which between Marchand, Sam Bennett, and Tom Wilson, I don't think there's anyone you'd rather not play in this tournament. Maybe Matthew Tkachuk could go on that list, but it's just kind of that nasty type line that is there to kill minutes, and I think that's a perfect place for him. But once again, would you rather him? Would you rather Mark Scheifele? Who would you rather in that particular game?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think a big talk was Connor Bedard. Obviously, there's injury, and he had a horrible 10 games heading into the Olympic break as well. But you think Connor Bedard or even Mark Scheifele with the face-offs, we know Canada's face-off percent was poor. Other than Crosby was out, and he had one of the highest ones, and he had Horvat, and the rest were near the 50s. But it's very interesting. And do you think does it make sense to have Bennett, Marchand, and Wilson all on this roster? Obviously, we didn't have Cirelli got kicked or was injured and wasn't able to go as well. Do you think does it even make sense to have 3 goons on a fourth line in this speed and this type of competition?
Where else are you going to stick them, right? And that's part of the problem coming into this tournament is you got to put them somewhere. You're dressing 13 forwards. Your 14th forward is hurt. So there's somewhere that they have to play in this lineup. And so do you put them together? Sure. They know they're
Yeah.
probably not going to score many goals. They're going to cause some problems. They're going to get some momentum back. But in the end, they know their role. They know they're not going to be going against the Armageddon line for points.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind the idea of it. I thought it was kind of you give the fans what they want by putting all the best players on the same line, then you put
Yeah.
all the goons together on another line. But in the end, it ultimately did kind of serve its purpose, right? And I think
Right.
that in many ways was part of it.
Mm.
And I think it worked out for them. In the end, they got that one hit, the Dylan Larkin hit, I think will
Yeah.
forever live inside my mind.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you see it coming from a mile away. You see kind of the skating come in, and they put the perfect camera angle to see that
Yeah.
skate kick around the boards. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, just the wrong injury to the wrong player at the wrong time, and was a pretty big difference for
Yeah,
Canada.
for sure. And well, actually, obviously we're still in the first game here, but I'm jumping the gun. Those three guys were more effective, I would say, than whatever line, right? Like that fourth line, that Reinhart, Jarvis, and whoever else was on that line. In my opinion, like it's crazy that those guys felt more effective in those last couple games than that Reinhart Jarvis line. So
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And you also put a guy like Reinhardt on that line, and why is Reinhardt there?
no,
He's there to
yeah,
kind of generate a little
exactly.
bit of
Yeah,
offense, right?
for
And
sure.
you're not going to get that on a fourth or third, fourth line. Not saying Seth Jarvis isn't a gifted offensive player, but
Yeah,
not necessarily to the caliber he's used
no.
to playing with in Florida.
Okay, we'll stay on this topic of Sam Reinhart, and we'll kind of just still look at the scope of the entire tournament. So he kind of plays the extra forward type of role, a guy at the Four Nations who played around that middle top six. Do you think that maybe he should have been moved up in the lineup? Obviously, we know his offensive capabilities. Then you get into the games, like we saw very close games in the knockout round. What do you think about the role Sam Reinhart played, and could he have been elevated potentially into the lineup?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's definitely an argument to be made to put him higher up in that lineup. And we saw what he was capable of at Four Nations, and he kind of jumped a few different lines during that stretch. But I think in many ways, you look to why is he there? And this has kind of been the question of throughout this entire tournament is for most of the guys on this team is each one serves a very particular purpose. Whether it's on their defensive side, you have Makar and Taves plays together. You have the rest of those defensive core. One's kind of an offensive minded, one's more defensive minded. And so each player on those teams has a very specific role. Yes, Morrissey getting hurt early hurt as well, but you look for those particular roles to be played. And Sam Reinhart's a guy that you look to generate some offense for your team. And we saw that at Four Nations. He was heavily relied upon, but not really given the role on this team. And I think that was definitely something that I was a little bit surprised about. And the rise of Macklin Celebrini was a huge part of why that ended up happening and why, of course, he didn't necessarily get that high quality minutes. But a guy like Celebrini, he certainly served that role well. And I think when you look at kind of who's going to be shifting out, you're not going to take a guy like Mark Stone off, not when he's playing alongside Crosby. But once Crosby goes down, then the question becomes, well, who else do you put him in there for? Because everyone serves a role on this team. It's the same reason why you don't put, Caleb said it earlier with Connor Bedard, right? And I would say there's no role that Connor Bedard would play on this year's Canada team that would help them in the end because
Yeah, for
Canada's
sure.
team, more of that defensive minded team. We saw throughout the tournament, they relied upon that for most of it as well. And outside of that top line, which was kind of that Armageddon line, when it got going, the team looked really good and we saw them put up a lot of goals. But when it didn't, we saw the explosion from within.
Yeah, for sure. Like that top line with McKinnon on it. I felt like there was times where sure the entire team's going, all that and everybody on that forward core was going, but then there's times it felt like sure they were going, but then the next three lines just were, in my opinion, much not very effective at all. Like you see players who needed to elevate their game, like Nick Suzuki when Crosby's out, McKinnon's up there. He struggled, in my opinion. He couldn't be a right winger. He couldn't be a center. And then you see, like you try to bump up Hagel, he wasn't great. Go down the list, Reinhardt. Like it's interesting the way they handled this depth. Like all these guys are top, like they're top point getters on their teams, right? But then you see like some of them just fizzled out and were bottom six guys that just weren't as effective. It just doesn't make sense. Why would they not try and build, like they should have just spread out the lineup more? And do you think if they had a Scheifele and a Bedard, there's no way, you just think there's no way that they would find a way and score an extra goal against Czechia in the quarter, Finland in the semifinals, or even eventually USA?
And that's a very fair question too. But I think you come into the tournament and you look at that team and you say, okay, where do they fit? And with hindsight behind us, yes, it's good to know. And Braden Point goes down too, which is another huge injury coming into the tournament.
That one hurt. Yeah.
But it's also the fact that, well, you could have made a pretty good argument to put Bedard on that team instead of a guy like Braden Point. I would have been perfectly okay with that because relatively similar role type player. But instead they go with the more defensive approach. They understand that to go and beat the U.S. team, they're going to have to play a little bit more of that physical type style. They're going to have to go into corners and win puck battles. And we saw that in the gold medal game. And I think you walk away from that gold game, and I'm sure we'll get to it. I know jumping the gun as well, but that game, Canada plays that game. I think you walk away happy from that game because you play it 10 times, you might win 6 or 7 of them, but you unfortunately find yourself on the wrong end of it in today's game. So, or in whatever day's game it was.
Yeah.
So I think that there is an argument to be made to have different players in the lineup, but ultimately they made a team and they designed their team to beat the Americans. And I think you play that game, you walk away happy with the result, not necessarily with the actual result, the final score, but with the way the game was played for them.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. But you want to
I mean, I didn't hate the additions they had. Obviously, Cirelli and Point go down, and what you bring. Sam Bennett was one of them. Conn Smythe winner, scored a goal in the Four Nations final.
It's mind-boggling that he wasn't on the team.
He didn't make the team. Do you think maybe in their conversations it was either two goons, we'll call them goons, Tom Wilson or Sam Bennett, and they just chose Tom Wilson because he's having a good year in Washington, and Sam Bennett had a very lackluster start of the year in Florida. Just feels hard to leave that type of big game player, like we mentioned Jordan Binnington. He's on this team because he's proven on international stage, and obviously Sam Bennett, you could call him proven. Maybe he scored a big goal in the Four Nations final. As I mentioned, won a Conn Smythe. Just a big time player, and they don't take him on the initial roster.
That one for me was the biggest surprise, and it wasn't Connor Bedard not being there. It wasn't Mark Scheifele, but it was Sam Bennett for me because you look at that tournament, the role he played, and it was exactly what Canada needed at this tournament. Yes, double IHF rules, right? And it was a huge talking point coming into the tournament. You need a guy who can play within the rule book, who can stay disciplined. And Marchand was a similar player to that. Didn't have a great tournament, but he was one of those players too, where you need guys who will get under their skin. You saw it, especially with Matthew Tkachuk, with Leon Draisaitl. You need guys who can get under the skin of their opponents, who can make you start second guessing every time you go into a corner. Whether you put your head down and try and look for a puck, you're going to get clobbered. And I think a guy like Sam Bennett, he plays physical, he plays with skill, he's a big time type player. You need that kind of player on your team. And so for me, that was the biggest surprise. Tom Wilson was there, Sam Bennett wasn't, because yes, they're somewhat similar players, but I just thought it was an absolute disaster not to have him on that team.
Okay.
Now transitioning, we got lost. I don't know where we are.
Honestly, that's the type of conversation.
That's what we do every podcast.
Exactly.
But I'm going to transition a little bit more into the Switzerland game now.
Yeah.
So we see Morrissey goes out with the injury. He only played one game the entire tournament, which is unfortunate. Then you see Sanheim come in. What would you say? What do you expect from a guy who's scratched and then just jump in the lineup like that from Sanheim? And did he meet expectations? Did he do more than what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, you come in and once again, it's what's your role on this team, right? And for him, it's a guy that he's going to shut down the defensive side. And I think he did exactly what he needed to. Were there some chances, I'm sure, that he'd want back? Sure. But I think that could go for a lot of different guys on the team. But for me, I was impressed with how quickly he came back in. And I know it is a little bit of a gap. It's not a tremendously large gap, and that's part of the beauty of these tournaments is it is the next guy up mentality. And so I thought he'd played decently well. But still, I mean, the Swiss are a team who are going to get a lot off the rush. They had a lot of chances against the Canadians. And I think in many ways you saw you put Thompson in, give him his chance to try and kind of earn that spot. But in the end, Binnington kind of earned his deal, and that's why they went forward in the tournament.
Okay, back to the Morrissey point. He goes out. Someone who I thought got elevated in the lineup, but I think did a pretty good job. He was pretty noticeable out there with the puck. Was Thomas Harley, and he scores a goal in this game. What did you think of Harley's game? Obviously, kind of came out of nowhere when he got added to the Four Nations roster. Everyone was like, we'll see how he does. Then he did all right for his role jumping into the lineup of Four Nations. And then I think he played a pretty decent role here at the Olympics with obviously no Morrissey. What do you think about his game?
Yeah, I mean, for me coming into the tournament, I didn't have him on my roster. And looking back on it, I am kind of confused why I didn't. And you look at his game, right? And I would pretty confidently say he was Canada's second best defenseman at this tournament, behind Cale Makar. And even Makar didn't have a great tournament compared to his standards. But I think you look at the value that a guy like Thomas Harley brings, not necessarily in the name value respect, but kind of in that two-way type offense. A team like Canada, you need someone who can jump up and into the rush and play off the cycle. But you saw him play both of those roles, and I thought that was really important for this Canadian team to have someone that could jump up on the offensive side, but also really shut the door defensively. So, a guy like Thomas Harley, I thought had a really good tournament, and once again, everyone has a role coming into these tournaments, and I thought Harley really showed himself well, especially at this recent Olympics.
Mm-hmm. So, as we segue to the Switzerland game, obviously we have just the two changes. It's Morrissey out, and then we have Bennett comes in the lineup. I believe I could be wrong, but I believe it was Bennett that comes in. What would you say? And I guess Thompson as well. Which game would you say did Canada play better in? Like, which one were they more effective? What was the
similar scorelines?
Similar scorelines. But would you say, was there a difference in play between those two games, or do you think they're pretty much solid, even though they had a couple lineup changes?
I would say without a doubt it was the Czech game they looked better in, and I know I've said this on a few different places, but that Switzerland game, I still believe that if you run that game and you play that game again, there's a chance that Switzerland actually goes out and wins that game, because they had so many chances that they didn't end up capitalizing on, and Logan Thompson had a huge part in that. But they played a really, really good game, just didn't have that finishing touch. And if for Canada, they didn't, like, they looked okay. Not to say they didn't play well. They ended up taking that game by a high margin. But I thought that the game against the Czechs, they were by far the dominant team. There wasn't any hope for the Czechs from the start to the finish. Even if the score was tight, both those teams knew who was going to come out on top. In that Switzerland game, even when Canada went up, I wasn't convinced that the Swiss weren't going to come back because of the way that they played. And we saw that through the tournament. Obviously, a huge injury at the end was kind of the news storyline coming out of it. But I did think that the Swiss played a really good game. They challenged Canada, I'd say, more so than what they were anticipating. And that was the start of kind of the competition rising to Canada's level that we saw through the rest of that tournament.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Thompson gets the start in this one. Binner gets the start in the first one. What are your thoughts going in? Obviously, France game might be, you can give it to anybody. Obviously, Canada's going to come out with the win. But after that, it's the quarterfinals. Who is your number one going to that game? Who's your starter after both the backup and the starter get a start?
For me, after Jordan Binnington's game off the opening game against the Czechs, he earned that spot.
Yeah.
And he answered the question really early, and I know it's kind of jumping to conclusions, but you do kind of want to pick your goaltender before you get put into a situation where you can't. And I think Jordan Binnington was the right call, and we saw that through the rest of the tournament. He came up with some huge saves. But Logan Thompson, yes, he's a really good goaltender. He didn't necessarily get the opportunity to earn his spot because of the way Jordan Binnington played early on. And so I wasn't necessarily upset to see Binnington get the starts the rest of the way. I thought he played really well through the rest of the tournament. But for a guy like Logan Thompson, obviously you would have wanted, and kind of a guy that left off of Four Nations, you lose a little bit of that chance to prove yourself there. Of course, Binnington really earns his spot back onto the Olympic team to even get to this point. But it's one of those seasons and it's one of those tournaments where it doesn't matter who the better goaltender is at the start. And it doesn't matter who the better goaltender is, 3 or 4 games ago. It matters who's riding the hot hand now. And we see that at just about every IHF tournament, the goaltender you start with doesn't necessarily mean the goaltender you're going to finish with. And so Binnington got the start. He earned that start. He showed that he was hot. A few weak goals, sure, against France, but I think we all knew that when those games got big, he was going to come bring his best, and we saw that through the rest of the tournament.
All right, so in the France game now, we see obviously, unless you have something else about Switzerland.
No, we can move on to France.
We've talked so much about these three games where I feel like there wasn't much going on compared to the final games, but the one interesting thing in the France game, obviously, it was a blowout. Canada needed to score as many goals as possible. We see obviously the one thing I'm surprised we haven't got to yet was the Tom Wilson Crinan, somewhat of a fight. People called it a fight. I didn't really think it was a fight, but the gloves fell off. Do you agree? Do you think it's okay for Wilson to go and this is a better this I'm getting,
rephrase your question.
I'm rephrasing.
Okay.
Who do you think initiated this fight? Because from what it looks like, some people say it's Crinan, some people say it's Wilson. Who do you really think initiates this fight? And is it just because Crinan was the one who laid the hit on McKinnon earlier?
I'll be honest, I don't think either of them really initiated. I think it was out of gut reaction from what they've done for so long, and they both threw their gloves because you could see it. As soon as they threw their gloves, they went, "Oh, I'm not allowed to do that." And they both just kind of freeze up at each other. Yeah. And then Crino, of course, goes out and tries to beat the snot out of him. But it was one of those kind of weird plays where it was like, and you see them they drop it out of instinct. And then they're processing, wait, can I do this? Can I not do this? And then, of course, Wilson tries to get away from that point. He turtles down and Grinnell's all over him. But it was one of those kind of weird type plays that I don't think either guy really walked away happy from that. Of course, Grinnell gets suspended by his own organization. But it was definitely a weird play to see because it looked like both guys immediately regretted it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, well, now that we've done it, we might as well finish the job.
Yeah. It was it's a pretty lame fight to be suspended by your organization. I think that's where I land on it. It was I still don't think it was really a fight. It was crazy to me, but I mean, France has got to do what they got to do, man.
Yeah. So, now, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Wilson was still on that top line during this game, right? And then maybe they make that big match, that big dominant first line. Maybe I believe was it around the Czechia game where they kind of loaded up that top line? The Switzerland game.
Yeah,
they made that top. Anyways, I'm just looking at the IIHF website.
They went on and off. Right?
Okay, yeah. Do you think that fight maybe played any implications of why they kind of took him down to that fourth line?
I'm sure it's played part of it, but at the same time, they went back and forth so much throughout this tournament that I wouldn't even say there was one specific moment that they kind of went, okay, we're sticking with this, because even in the final, we saw a few times where they were playing with the lines, and whether Tom Wilson ended up on McDavid's line for a particular reason or if it was just by sheer coincidence with the changes, he did still play with McDavid a few times in that game. So I wouldn't say that there was any one moment that was like, well, we got you now, go back down to the fourth line. But there were definitely some moments where it was like, okay, let's put the best players with the best players and let those grinders really grind it out.
Yeah.
Well, actually, unless I'm mistaken, I believe the starting lineup, Tom Wilson was always that first line right wing until the final game against USA. So
like what they released, Hockey Canada released.
But they always. I know you were gone for some of this, but like it was always Tom Wilson to start, and then they would move McKinnon to that line basically halfway through the first period sometimes and just ran it. So I just find it mind-boggling that Tom Wilson was up there that long. Do you think? So here's my next question: do you think if it wasn't McKinnon and not Tom Wilson, who would you say would be that next candidate for that right wing? Obviously, I personally thought it would have been Sam Reinhart from the get-go. Who do you think that candidate could have been?
Sam Reinhart.
Yeah,
that was, and it was another thing where it was like, okay, well, at what point are you going to change it? And Braden Point was up there. Mitch Marner was in that consideration. Connor Bedard was in that consideration. But ultimately, they went with Tom Wilson. They tried to go kind of that Zach Hyman route, which is another guy where you have the opportunity to replace them, and you know what kind of lines you want to run with. So why don't you go get the guy who McDavid's been playing with all this time, who's shown to work with him in the past? That one was kind of the start of the end, I thought, for Canada, was you have the opportunity to go get a guy like Zach Hyman. And yes, Seth Jarvis, a guy who shows a lot of heart, obviously wanted to be there. The interview alone was enough to really move you as to how much it meant to him to be on this team. But at the same time, there is a game that you need to win, and you're still putting Tom Wilson with Connor McDavid on the top line, where a guy like Zach Hyman has done it in Edmonton for years now, and you still just don't go with him, which to me is, once again, mind-boggling.
I know you were happy with those Zach Hyman, Caleb. I don't know if you could see Parker very well, but Caleb's he's a Flames fan wearing a Flames hat, so not the biggest fan of Zach Hyman.
It was targeted.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe Zach Hyman and Evan Bouchard deserve not to.
Yeah, he's a big Evan Bouchard hater too. He thought we made a B roster, and I think Caleb had Evan Bouchard as the 7th defenseman on the B roster. So that's how far down the totem pole he has Evan Bouchard. Anyways, move on from that. Let's transition to the elimination games. We'll start obviously with the quarterfinal game against Czechia. I remember watching this game. So I was actually on a trip with all my buddies in the Dominican Republic for reading week. And I remember watching this at a restaurant, eating the spiciest shrimp I've ever had, sweating bullets. And I was sweating even more because this game was so tense in the third period. Obviously, Mitch Marner shows that he could show up in big-time games, get the winner. But, man, it was a close game, fellas. It was just a close game.
Yeah, that was one of those games, right, where coming in you knew it was going to be a lot tighter. And I think most people accepted that it wasn't going to be another run-of-the-mill preliminary round game where Canada's going to walk all over the Czechs, because you knew that the Czechs were going to be a different team coming into this game. Games matter. Your goaltending becomes your best goaltending. And we saw Lucas Dostal performance, who has dominated world championships in the past, a huge part to their gold medal run back in 24. And we saw that again at this Olympic run. And so I don't think, for me at least, it was all that surprising to see. But I do think that the fact that it went to overtime, I know that I sweated a significant amount as well. And it was a terrifying game. And because you knew how tight these two teams were going to be. The Czechs go up early, they hold their lead, they lose their lead, they get back the lead, they lose it. And it's like this back and forth where it's like, are we actually about to do the World Juniors for what now, the 4th straight time?
Yeah.
It feels like it's been every single year. And especially after Canada's men's world championship performance last year, where they lost to Denmark in the quarterfinals, it was like, are we actually going to be doing this again? And I think for me, I'd kind of prepared myself to be in that type game. I'm not sure I was ready for 2 more of those type games, but it was definitely a game to watch.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. The fact that we go up first with 3 minutes in, Macklin Celebrini with the goal, it just felt like this game was going to be completely Canada's way. And then
like the first game.
No, this game.
No, but like the first game of the tournament, though, they scored 3 minutes in. You think, okay, we're gonna we won the first game 5-0. That's what I was trying
pretty
to
much. Yeah, it felt like the same thing. Yeah, good analogy. It just felt like we're just gonna run over Czechia again with that Celebrini goal early. But then Lucas Sedlak, and then obviously David Pastrnak. He just picked it up. Like David Pastrnak is unbelievable.
Pasta, yeah.
Where do you think what do you think the mindset is in that after that first period? You're down first time in the entire tournament, down in a game since 2010 when best on best in the Olympics. What do you think the mindset is with Canada? Do you think they really need to press, because they really did in the end? Like what do they need to do when they're down like that?
Yeah, it starts to become that adversity factor that I'm sure you guys have talked about a lot on your channel as well. But it's the fact that every single team, when you watch a tournament, any IIHF tournament you look at, before the gold medal game, you will face some sort of adversity. It doesn't matter whether it's in the gold medal game or before it, you will always face something through a tournament. And it's all about how you respond. And I thought the Canadians came out and they showed that even if they go down, they're going to be a team that are going to come back. And that to me was the biggest factor that was like, okay, this team has what it takes to go on to the gold medal game. And we even saw it against, of course, the next game. But it was one of those games, I think, for Canada that it was their first taste of it. And obviously 4 nations, you get a little bit of it as well. But the fact that it's a new team coming in, there's some new players in the room, you lose your captain half, 3/4 of the way through this game. you knew that there was going to be a new voice that stepped up and made an impact. And I think we saw that, especially as this game went forward. And we saw that desperation kind of factor kick in for Canada. But I did think that they played really well.
Okay, we'll go back to the big storyline that you just mentioned. Sidney Crosby goes down in this game and remains out for the tournament. You lose your captain, so much experience, has a golden goal back in 2010, which is probably one of the most iconic goals ever in Canadian hockey history. What does that do to the mentality of the lineup? This is kind of moving forward into the tournament. Now, we'll come back to this game, obviously, but what does that do in the locker room, knowing that that big key presence who calms everybody down? He's calming sense when on the bench, even in these tight games, right? Like, Sid's just a guy you look to for advice. Even just being in his presence just, calms the heartbeat down a couple beats. What do you think him being left off for the remainder of this tournament kind of did to the locker room?
Yeah, and I think you tie it back to what role does he play and what role does everybody else bring on this team? And you look across this team coming in, there's a lot of NHL Stanley Cup champions on it. There's a lot of guys who were on Four Nations. There's a lot of winners on this team. And I think that part was by design where you're not just looking at one guy to kind of be that standalone leader. And I think coming into the tournament, there was a guy who I was looking at with Drew Doughty, who not necessarily the best defender as far as skill goes, and not as for speed and the rest of it, the whole 9 yards. But once again, there's a reason why he plays a role on this team. And so when a guy like Sidney Crosby does go down, I think he's kind of the guy that you look to, regardless of if he's wearing an A or a C or whatever, that he's been there. He's done that. He was on the 2010 team. He was on the 14 team. He was a guy that you look to be that kind of standalone factor and be able to lead that team. And I thought he did a decent job. I think you also look across the board with other players. Of course, you can go up and down the list, a lot of champions on that team, but still, you can't lose a player like Sidney Crosby and move on from it. And I think we saw that with the Canadians, especially as the tournament went onward, right? Where it wasn't necessarily all sunshine and rainbows for them. We saw it on their power play in particular, where even that I wouldn't say looked all that great. And yes, you get to put Macklin Celebrini on it, but you can't really trade a Celebrini for Crosby, especially with the type of role Crosby plays on that power play and how lethal he is from below the goal line, which seems crazy to think, but he's kind of that guy that you want the puck on his stick. And you even tie it to that Czechia game off the top where you see them work down below the goal line, and the Czechs just put their hands up because they don't even know what hit them on that power play.
Yeah. So obviously we see the infamous 6 men on the ice, 8 men on the ice. How does that happen? Like I just don't. It's still unbelievable. Insane. I understand how it happens when the players hop on, but how does it get missed how does it not get called
Ridiculous.
by the refs? But the other thing is like I don't know if I can you blame the refs for that, Parker? If even nobody on Canada noticed, nobody said a thing until we didn't find out till after the game, or at least overtime.
I personally thought it was a translation error. I thought that the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 didn't add up the other way. But like you look at it, right, and it's inexcusable, yes. And the fact that it happens in the next or the gold medal too, it was just kind of a funny tournament full of weird non-call penalties. Where there were some calls that were like, okay, come on. There were some where it was like, this is so obvious, anyone could call this. And then it was just a kind of a wide combination of crazy a little bit. And it seemed to at moments go against Canada, at moments it seemed to go for Canada. And so I think in the end you look at it and go, that goal could have very well had some major consequences for that tournament. And I think especially for the IIHF, I think they're very grateful that Canada ended up winning that game, because if they end up losing that game because of that one play, or it could be the reason why they have a problem on their hands. But I think in the end, Canada wins this game. I think you flush it, you move on to the next one. But it was definitely a storyline going into the next one where it was like, okay, or is there a call coming back the other way, and I'm still not entirely convinced that it did, although Solani might think otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the overtime goal. And Parker, we were looking at your channel, and we believe, are you a Bruins fan? Is this correct?
I am.
Okay, this is great. So I'm a big Sens fan, so obviously Leaf hater.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Obviously Bruins fan, Leafs hater, I presume. Correct?
Yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Caleb, you're a Flames fan, still a Leafs hater. So hopefully we can all relate on this. But how nice was it to see Mitch Marner show up in a big time moment with a beautiful goal like that?
Again.
Yeah,
yeah.
Four Nations, Sweden.
Yeah,
too.
true.
Yep.
It's so funny to even think, right? Like the fact that you boo a guy mercilessly on away ice, you travel all the way down there to boo him, and then he comes home and you boo him again, and it's the very fact that he ends up being the guy that all of a sudden Leaf fans are cheering for. I think that's just kind of the beauty of the game. And I was watching with two Leaf fans myself, and you see them celebrate and then go, "Oh no, I can't actually cheer for this guy anymore." So it was, it was obviously a great goal. Great to see him get on the board in those clutch moments, like we saw at Four Nations, where even against the Swedes, where that game, I mean, pretty similar to this Czech one, where the back and forth type game can go either way. If Swedes come back in that game, of course, Canada comes back in this one. But in the end, Canada pulls through with a beautiful goal by Mitchell Marner to send the Maple Leafs happy.
Of course. No, I love Mitch Marner. Ever since he left the Leafs, it's nice to. I know he's on Vegas, and that doesn't really help me, but the Flames suck, so I can cheer a little bit
on the
more
tankathon, so
exactly. So I personally have been cheering for Mitch Marner for a little bit now. It was unbelievable. The goal, like the stakes
So
were
nice.
it was so high, but like
So nice.
it's just the way it went down and everything. He walks the one guy, just finds a way through and scores, like just an unbelievable goal. And man. Now, my last question for this game, and then we can move on. I know we're already getting up there in time, but do you think the Nick Suzuki goal is bigger than the Mitch Marner goal? Because the thing is, Nick, it's 5-on-5, and you need a goal where when you move on to 3-on-3, obviously Canada's probably got the edge over Czechia.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think it's more important that Nick Suzuki finds the goal, or do you think it's more important that Mitch Marner was the one?
I mean, I feel like kind of the obvious answer here is to say the Suzuki one was more important because they don't get there otherwise. But you look at the way that game was trending, right? And the Czechs had started their kind of defensive collapse. We saw it in just about every other game Canada ended up playing in, but they went to their defensive style. And it's very difficult to generate much 5-on-5 against those kind of teams. And so I think that goal for sure was huge for Canada. The overtime goal, important as well. They all contribute in the end to the victory, but you don't get that goal, and it always comes from a guy you're not expecting. It's the beauty of these tournaments. The 13th forward,
awesome.
The 7th defenseman, Shea Theodore scoring from who knows where in that next one. But it's part of the beauty of these tournaments is guys who you least expect come through at the biggest moments. And Suzuki, he got his chance. He didn't miss it. And I think that was one of the more loud screaming parts of this tournament. I wouldn't say it was the loudest because this tournament, especially in the playoffs, was a bit of a whirlwind, but certainly an exciting moment.
And you know what? I think Nick Suzuki is the perfect guy to do it. You think about the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, I'm a Sens fan. Don't like the Montreal Canadiens. Anyways, they are a team that always seem to find a way to win or get to overtime somehow. So it's really just poetic that Nick Suzuki's the guy to do it. Coming to the tournament, I was actually very excited to watch Nick Suzuki. Maybe didn't have as great of a tournament as I would have liked him to have, but you can't discredit this goal. It was just perfect timing, exactly what he does for the Canadians. And we're thankful to move on to the next round. So, especially after the Palat goal, it's pretty degrading with the 6-0. God, it was a whole whirlwind. Anyways, guys, let's move on to the semifinals game against the Finns. And this game, another one where the Canadians get into a hole. We go down with a pair of goals. And Parker, I'll ask you this. Second period, Canada goes down 2 goals what's going through the mind? Because all of a sudden, there's about maybe 20. Anyways, Canada's down a couple goals in an elimination semifinals game.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had the privilege of being live for this game, and what was going through my head was do not swear under any circumstance because it was trending to be a really, really depressing game to watch. And I wouldn't say that it turned out, and I mean, yes, right? And they come back, and it was great. But you go down against the Finns, in most circumstances, you're not coming back down 2 goals against the Finns. No. And so, yes, they overcommitted defensively, and yes, their coach has had quite a bit of conversation around his tenure with that team. Yes. But in the end, they pull through. So
it's true.
I will say I'm happy that they pulled through. I was terrified in that moment, especially when that second one went in, but they find their way through. They win that game, Sidney Crosby-less game. And by some miracle, they move on.
Yeah, I mean, the second goal was like so gut-wrenching. Obviously, penalty kill goal. Eric Holla somehow ends up with the puck, kind of bobbled through a couple Canadian players, and all of a sudden he's going the other way. You're like, Binner, big-time situational. It's going to save your pal. Keep it a 1-goal game. And just a tidy finish there from Holla. And all of a sudden, the remainder of the power play, you don't convert. Caleb, do you think Canada, your mindset after that 2-goal lead for Finland, there's about 30 minutes left to go in the game? What's going through your mind?
Well, I think you just gotta turn it around. It was horrible in my opinion. The 5-on-5 play was very back and forth. They picked it up, but Finland had to pay I don't know. It's just the Finland way. It feels like the European way. Just keep the pucks to the perimeter and shut down every line you can. Canada just needed a gift, and that's basically what they got. Sam Reinhart has an unbelievable tip that he definitely did not mean to do on the power play, and just that's the gift. That's what they needed, man. And it worked out, and now you've got momentum. You're only down by 1 goal in the second intermission, and then Shea Theodore finds one.
Oh my goodness!
And you're just on fire. There is no way they were going to lose. There's no way they're going to lose after that Theodore goal. They just dominated play in that third period, and then. Who else? Nathan McKinnon on the power play as well. In that, this is what I thought 100%. What would you give a percent that you thought Canada was going to score in that last power play, Parker? Because it's got to be high.
I'd say 60%. And
oh, wow.
Even that, it was you knew it was coming, and the momentum factor and the rest of it. But then you have to think, well, it's also the Finns.
Right.
And the Finns notoriously got their defensive side. But luckily, puck squirts out, and even you thought that the power play was ending, right? You didn't even get to the you're watching that clock go down. It was like, oh, they're not going to score on this, and they're going to hit the stretch pass, and it's about to be a breakaway going back the other way, but luckily no, Nathan McKinnon with the goal and finds his goal that will be remembered for quite a while, I think, in Canadian hearts.
That was the exact thought process. The power play is ending. McDavid and McKinnon are somehow still on the ice for the entire 2 minutes. And McDavid just kind of feeds a pass. I thought it was going to get picked off. And McKinnon barely had any sort of an angle there. Somehow squeaks it by. And I remember just I'm sure everyone can relate, just pure elation when that goes. And pure relief, to be honest. Because obviously anything can happen in overtime. And that goal came in with under a minute to go, and Canada is off to the gold medal game at the Olympics. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was crazy. Well, and the other antics too, offside or not, I think it was pretty clearly.
I think it was good.
It was onside, but you have to challenge it if you're Finland. But
absolutely, you do. Yeah.
You know your opponent. You know you're basically playing the U.S. Obviously, that Slovakia USA game was after, but it's USA. Yeah.
I just had a talking point.
Yeah.
I was going to tell him, we're just talking about Nathan McKinnon scoring the winner here against Finland. Stat comes out after the tournament, or even just during the tournament. The only player in the minus, in plus minus, is Nathan McKinnon. Parker, thoughts on that? Obviously, Nathan McKinnon, superstar on Canada, but a negative on Team Canada. It's pretty wild.
Well, as we like to say, it's called the Armageddon line for a reason. Either they're going to generate a lot of offense, or it's probably going back in your own net. And reminds you quite a bit of the old Bruins perfection line, right? Where when that worked, it was great. And they won a lot.
Yeah.
But when it didn't work, it was ugly because you knew that not only were you not going to win games, you were probably going to get blown out in those games. So the fact that Canada had kind of that similar type style, we've seen it with the Leafs as well, where for a while there they went with that super line. When it worked, it looked great. When it didn't, the Leafs lost because if you only have one line of offense, you needed to kind of outscore your opponents. And I think in many ways we saw that kind of haunt them towards the end of this tournament, but still,
Yeah.
offense first versus defense first. Everyone plays a role.
True. All right. Do you have any more thoughts on the last game? I'm going to go to USA.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Well, we find out heading into the game, we find out Crosby is not playing. Morrissey's not playing. Crosby apparently was pretty close, but I don't know how much that's still
They did
true.
everything possible.
I know.
That's how they framed it.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to jump to the first goal.
Sure.
Do you have any other things before?
No, we can talk about the first goal. Absolutely, yeah.
First goal, pretty early, 6 minutes in. Yeah, 6 minutes. Matt Boldy finds the puck and just absolutely, I wouldn't say walks Devon Taves and Makar. I think he just squeaks by. Would you ever expect that from Cale Makar and Devon Taves to ever, I don't know, poorly execute a play like that?
I didn't have to think it. I saw it for most of the tournament, except they just didn't end up going in. That was and that part of it too, right? Was the Canadian goaltending was really good in the early stage of this tournament. They bailed out Canada a lot, but even in the game against the Swiss, and that was one game that you kind of draw from. That game was the Swiss had so many chances. Thompson turned them away in that game, but very well could have ended up in the other category. This game in the U.S., you start with a bit of a weak goal where you let Boldy walk in all alone. Wouldn't say I'm surprised. I mean, Matt Boldy's a great player, and he was one of the guys you're expecting to have a huge game here. But I wouldn't say that you really wanted to start the game with that, especially with how poor that performance was.
Yeah, that's just a tone setter, and it kind of looked like Taves and Makar were just flat-footed. Didn't expect, I think USA was going for a line change, and you probably expect maybe Boldy just to dump it in there and to go maybe peel off himself or maybe just play F1 and go in on the forecheck. But he just goes right down the middle, and a very slick finish past Pennington just kind of leaves it and just slowly makes his way into that. It is 1-0. Okay, after this goal, listen, Parker, 1-0 gold medal game. You're down 6 minutes early. What's the level of concern? We'll get a percentage out of 100 that this game won't go Canada's way.
I'd say it was about 75, 80%. Like, realistically, you knew the U.S. was going to score first. I was more concerned with how the U.S. scored first because Canada had been kind of iffy starters, and obviously they'd come back in games throughout the tournament. So as far as the U.S. getting up early, wouldn't say I was terribly surprised, but definitely a cause for concern with how poor that goal ended up being. And we saw the Canadians kind of bounce back, and then they started to find their game, but unfortunately, it did take a goal to get going, which could have very well cost them it.
Yeah. What do you say for both of you here? Because I think the play after that goal, I think it was pretty back and forth for most of that first period. Second period, just unbelievable domination. Would you say this was Canada's best game of the tournament?
Well, it was definitely Canada's best opponent they've played, right? Yeah. So you have to. That's a whole different game you're playing against the USA. Obviously, US is full of NHL players, right? You see other countries like Czechia, they're full of players who play overseas. It's a much more defensive, kind of structured level of hockey. So this is just an all-star game full of the best NHL players, right? Any team can win on any given day. Is it their hardest game? Yes. Well, this is the best game they played.
It's just the way they played.
Because obviously the domination in the first game against Czechia, or you say, 10-2 against France?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably give it there. You can't really say the best game. They didn't win, right?
Okay.
They didn't win. I get it. Listen, they dominated. But in order to play your best game, you need to be able to put the puck in the back of the net because that's the name of the game. They didn't do that today. I know they generated a bunch of scoring chances, Caleb, but the name of the game is put the puck in the back of the net. Couldn't do it.
What's your thoughts, Parker? Because I think that's a little insane.
I would have to agree. I think it was the game against the Czechs more than anything else. I don't think it was their game against the U.S. Don't get me wrong, they played great, but you look at their quality of chances, and it was more or less the same problem that they had for kind of their first two games of the playoffs, where they didn't necessarily get those second and third chances. They only got the first one. And the U.S. cleared out those chances. Sure, you can look at it and say, wow, they got a few, they missed them. And that's also true. But the amount of chances that they got, you're not going to beat a goaltender like Hellebuck on a one chancer.
Right.
You need multiple chances, you need rebounds, you need tips in front. And they just didn't really have that in that game. They had a lot of chances, they had a lot of shots.
Yeah.
But as far as kind of that quality goes, we didn't necessarily see that like we did against like, you know, the Czechs early on and the Swiss a little bit. France, of course, they walked all over. But
Right.
I didn't necessarily see that in the game against the U.S., where you knew you had to play at your best game. You knew you had to get to those kind of dirty areas, and I just didn't see Canada really do that.
I mean, it would also help if they could hit the net. We'll get to that later on that McKinnon chance, anyways. So another big factor. We were live streaming this on YouTube, and when Canada goes down, they go up. On a 5-on-3 midway through the second period. 30 seconds into the first penalty, it was either Getzel or McAvoy. They take the second one, and you load up the top line, 5-on-3. I thought it was inevitable that we're going to tie up the game here. In fact, I said as soon as the second penalty was taken, I go, if Canada doesn't score here, we're not winning this game. And they don't score. What was your thought process when you see this stacked Canadian team get a chance on the 5-on-3?
Oh, crap. It's going to be a long one.
Yeah.
Right? Because you look at it, and it's one of those where you knew you needed one. And especially on that, where so much momentum goes into it. Yes, they generated quite a bit of momentum off that chance too, or off that power play too, but they needed one. And unfortunately, it just, and as you said, didn't quite work out for them in the end.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's crazy.
It was brutal, man. It just seemed like it was written in the stars.
Yeah.
Oh, it really did.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's okay because Cale Makar makes for it, finds a bit of space in front of him, rips it, far post, and in. You mentioned you're not going to beat Connor Hellebuck very easily, but just a perfect shot there from Cale Makar. Can't ask for much more. And I think it's bigger that it comes before the start of the third period, because then you have that intermission, and instead of, you're chasing the game one down, you're tied up with 20 minutes to go with a gold medal on the line. You mentioned it was 75% your confidence that the States would win this game after they took the 1-goal lead with only 6 minutes in. Where's it at after Cale Makar rips us home and ties it up?
I'd say it was 50-50. It's because at that point, you've seen what both goaltenders are going to give you. You know it's going to come down to one mistake, really, and that's what it ultimately came down to. But it comes down to one mistake, especially in these games, players you weren't expecting to be those key players coming in. And unfortunately for Canada, once again, fell on the wrong side of that, found on that opportunity.
Yeah, Kel, what do you think about that? What was your thought process? 20 minutes left to go.
Oh, I probably would I'd give the edge to the team with the better goalie. So I think I would have went Hellebuck, and I think it would be close. It's a classic USA-Canada game, so it's hard. It's got to be pretty close to 50-50. I'd probably say 55-45. Like, it's still pretty darn close, right?
Yeah.
So
Canada did dominate the shot chart, though, 19-8 in that second period. And obviously, Cale Makar just gives you a little bit of momentum to just, I think, the amount of chances. Like, they weren't too high quality, but they were getting looks. And Cale Makar, opened the door. That kind of does something for your mentality when you're finally able to beat a goaltender, especially Connor Hellebuck. Now, in his mind, he's been beaten. You know what I mean? If your goalie's running a hot streak, they got a shutout through 2 periods. That is just fully brick wall, Hart Trophy caliber winner. Connor Hellebuck we saw this last season. I think I'm going to say 60. I was more 60% Canada wins. I was the most optimistic out of the three of us, but that's just me. I'm an optimistic dude. This game goes on, 20 minutes pass, and we're still tied up. Couple penalties taken. Canada has, Sam Bennett took a penalty. It was a high sticking call. Jack Hughes loses part of his tooth. Yeah. Oh God, it was a whole situation. It looks like a rock star, though. I love the look. He owned it, so fair enough. But yeah, Sam Bennett takes a penalty. 7 minutes left to go. 1-goal game. In that time, with that time remaining left, it's pretty much next goal wins territory. Getting to that, Parker, fear level, nerves, where were they at when Sam Bennett takes his penalty and puts? It was a 4-minuter too. I should mention that. It was 4-minute penalty. Penalty. Oh God. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, high sticking blood. Anyways, back to the question: where were the nerves at, and did you think that was going to be the nail in the coffin that the States were going to capitalize on?
ironically, it felt the exact same as when they ended up scoring the goal. It felt like you knew what was coming, right? And fortunately, they, of course, get the penalty back. But it was one of those moments in those games where it's a huge turning point, right? And Canada's dominated for most of the game. And then all of a sudden, they don't. And there's the huge chance for the U.S. 4 minutes of power play time for a power play that has looked okay throughout the tournament. Not great, not terrible, but you know that when they get those chances, they're just waiting for that opportunity. And fortunately, a few key saves, some good defensive side, and ultimately they're able to kind of get bailed out a little bit towards the end.
Where you were streaming this game, right? You were
I was
streaming your
not.
reaction. Oh, you weren't doing the reaction. Okay.
I can't. No,
Yeah, okay.
that one
Okay.
was. I did the women's game, and
Yeah.
that was stressful. Like because it got to a point where it's just me watching it, and
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get at, because we actually did stream it. We're more just like I saw you're more of a commentary, which I think is awesome. Us, we just can't. We just were.
Just sit
It's
there.
more reaction,
Yeah.
but this was the quietest the stream ever was.
I
Like,
mean, our whole entire chat too is just Americans spamming Eagles and flags and everything like that. So there was not much to really chat to. But
yeah, like it was we try and fill we try and talk during the play.
Yeah.
We both agreed. We both
this,
agreed
yeah.
like let's just be silent. And I'm assuming that's kind of what you were like. That's kind of the mental state you were at as well watching this game.
yeah, it was a quiet. It was quiet and it was loud. There was not much in between on that one. It was either screaming or, oh God, here we go again.
Yeah.
yeah, I
It's,
agree.
it's fair.
Plus
Yeah.
10 decibel or like just zero. So
Yeah,
we're
it
just
was
like
just zero.
muted. Yeah. Oh gosh. So this game goes to overtime.
We will say
maybe
Jack Hughes bailed us out and saved us a minute of the penalty.
Oh,
kill,
absolutely.
but thankfully, but
Absolutely. Although I thought the kill was good. For what
it
they
was
had
a
to
good
kill off,
kill.
it was very
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
for sure.
Got the puck out. I think Bo Horvat did a really good job this tournament playing on the PK. So we're going to overtime. And maybe a bit of a parallel question about this. Thoughts on 3-on-3 overtime in the gold medal game?
It is a disaster and it is horrendous for the game of hockey. I don't know why we continue to do this. Stick to 5-on-5. I can appreciate for all the other games. For medal games, I will also say that bronze medal should be included in this. I know that when you're double stacking days, you can't do it. But if you do single days for the medal games, you let that run out for as long as you can. Play 5-on-5. Don't schedule it so that the closing ceremonies are mere hours away from the end of this game.
Exactly.
Because that's just it forces your hand. And play 4-on-4. I'd rather 4-on-4 than 3-on-3, because 3-on-3 is basically who gets the puck first, and that tends to be what it gets decided on. And it's like NFL overtime where they just changed that, where if you win a coin toss, you end up
you're very favored. Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, I mean, many forget the Crosby 2010. That was 4-on-4. And that was decent overtime too. Like,
just
I think it should be 5-on-5, but
I agree.
at the very least, it should be 4-on-4. I don't know why they decided to pivot just like the NHL did on the 3-on-3 stuff. It's mind-boggling. And I know World Championships, they do it? They do it in World Juniors and all that too. I understand that's what the IIHF does, but it's just it's crazy. Like best on best. Like that's why the World Cup of Hockey, that if the NHL can get that to a sustainable spot and have that every 4 years, hopefully in the end that will be the more. It's gonna take forever, but if that's the more meaningful thing, the 5-on-5 would just help it immensely for overtime. So yeah, it's just crazy. But
absolutely, yeah. Now
it is what it
the
is.
Four Nations, the Sweden game, was that 3-on-3 or am I mistaken?
I think that was 3-on-3.
3
It was
3-on-3.
only the bronze and gold, or
Okay.
only the gold medal was 5-on-5.
Yeah, so it would have been nice if it did that for the Olympics. Just like, obviously, I don't know. Who cares?
he did. He did
they even
against
go?
Czechia.
Canada didn't even go to the closing ceremonies, did they? Were they there?
Oh, I
the
doubt
team,
it.
the men's team, no.
No.
So
I
who
don't
cares?
think so.
Let's play some overtime. No. It's not like it was. Anyways,
most
there
of
was a
the
couple
women's
hours
team
gap,
left,
you
too.
know.
Yeah.
It's true.
Most of the women's team left, so yeah.
Yeah. So no. Listen, Canada had a couple opportunities in this overtime. I thought it was a lot more. I don't want to say players being selfish or trying to be the hero, but it was a lot like one player, like let's use McDavid as an example, comes in on the rush, tries to maybe rip it through a seam or something like that instead of maybe controlling the possession, moving it around. You have talented players like, listen, your first unit is McDavid, McKinnon, and McCarr, the 3 M's. Like, tell me you get possession in the offensive zone, they're not going to move it around. They're so fast. Their edges are just phenomenal. But it just seemed like maybe everybody wanted to be the hero, and no one really wanted to control the puck. I don't know. That's just what I found. Yeah.
I think it fell apart when the U.S. found the puck. I mean, it's a possession game, right? McDavid shoots it, whatever, gets pushed to the corner. USA's got possession. Both teams are going to, like, most 3-on-3s, you're not going to win in the first possession, right? I mean, when it's best on best, maybe it's different. But I think it falls apart when USA's got the puck. You have Nathan McKinnon, who comes out he changes, so he hops on. He's the first one back. It seems like he was 50-50 on what he wanted to do. Do he goes for the body, or does he just try and take up the passing lane? And then you have McDavid, who decides to skate towards the puck instead of probably take Jack Hughes, which he should have done. There's just a lot. Like, who would you blame more? Is it Binnington, McDavid, or McKinnon on this play?
Cale Makar.
Yeah, I was about to say, or Cale Makar. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if you saw the back angle of it, like where they showed it from, like the back from where the U.S.'s goals. Oh, it was terrible.
He wipes out and then just doesn't. Yeah.
He does nothing in the offensive zone to the play.
You can see it evolving too, right? Like it was a rough one to see, but
that's fair.
Unfortunately, it's the joy of it, right? Is one play, one mistake. And it's the guy who most people said shouldn't have even been on the team ends up scoring the game winner.
Yeah, and loses his tooth. And part of chips his tooth, and he doesn't matter because now he's got a gold medal. So, it kind of seemed like Cale Makar was just hoping. Well, I think he was obviously predicting they're going to turn the puck over and he's going to have a break up ice and try to make something with it with that such sluggish back check. And to your point, Cale, you talked about McKinnon. McDavid. We not covering Jack Hughes. I looked at this the other day. We talked about this, and I think McDavid's positioning. I don't think it was terrible because it looked like the guy with the puck. I forget who it was on that. Werenski. Yeah, he kind of had a path to the net because McKinnon was in the corner, and it kind of looked like McDavid was trying to play two different positions at the same time to either block the pass or take the man who's going into the net. And in the end of it didn't matter. But anyways,
and all 4 players. I mean, it's hard to blame Binnington here, but like all 3 of them did not execute.
To be fair to Jordan Binnington, though, like Jack Hughes, obviously phenomenal player, coming down open lane. Binner tries to go cross crease, way out of his net. Positioning is a little wild.
That's what he's been doing the entire tournament. Too,
I guess so. But
I don't know. But I think you could blame all 4 of them. That's what it goes. That's 3-on-3 sometimes.
Yeah, so. I would have liked McKinnon to take a bit more control into the corner because it kind of looked like he was either trying to play the body and he got bodied by Werenski, or I would have liked him just be confident, like take it back to your corner and maybe just ring it around or just make a play, right? And it just seemed like he was sluggish off the bench. I don't know. There's a million excuses. I'm not a professional hockey player, but I probably would have done 10 times worse. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter. Team USA, gold medalist since the first time since Miracle on Ice. So, instant emotions. I don't want you to take you back to a sad time, Parker, but what's running through your head when you see Jack Hughes score?
That was one of those moments where you could very much hear a pin drop. It was a bunch of no's followed by silence, and I think I sat there for an extra 20 minutes, 30 minutes with it on the background. Don't remember much from that time, and then had to go film a video some 2 hours later. And so that was another not so much fun video to have to go and film, but definitely a disappointing tournament for Canada, right? And I mean, it was one of those tournaments I think you look back on and say, well, men's side, disappointing, come away with the silver. You still get a medal, sure, right? Like that's still something to be proud of, but same on the women's side where you are basically gold or bust. You have 2 teams walk away with disappointing results. And I think at some point you have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what went wrong? And there was a lot to do with Hockey Canada. And I think we're going to see definitely a pivot moving forward. And we'll see for 2030.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. Like we've been posting final score graphics and player of the game graphics on Instagram and all that. I think it was probably 45 to an hour after the game ended when we posted it, because we just like, it just crossed my mind, oh, we should maybe at least post this. And
just demoralizing.
We just sat there for a solid 5-10 minutes, and then we started trying to read the chat where it's just
there was
Hawks,
no one reading that nonsense.
Eagles and USA, and it's just like, yeah, it was just the exact same thing, and I'm sure most of Canada was like that for sure. Yeah. So it's heartbreaking, but I have a very different question. We obviously know we have the silver medals given out, but that's not the big thing. We obviously have the Tinas, the stuffed animals. My question is, there's 25 of those handed out to Team Canada. How many are making it back to North America, and how many are already ripped to shreds? What do you think?
Between Daryl Watts and Nathan McKinnon, I think probably 2 heads have been ripped off, maybe some legs and arms along with it. That thing, there is no chance either of those things are back in Canada right now.
Well, actually, Macklin Celebrini said he has his in a suitcase still, so one has made it back.
At least one.
So he claims.
Yeah, right. He has to say what the media wants to hear. So he's
and I think from my understanding, I could be wrong. Somebody could have made this up, and I could have fell for it. But it sounded like the women's team brought a good chunk of them back to give to Poulin's dog. That's what I heard, as a dog toy.
Really?
So there might be a good chunk that made it back. I'm not saying they're going to survive or anything, but like, I think a good chunk actually went to dogs, which I mean,
you know what?
Fair.
I would have kept mine. You just got back from the Olympics. I get it's a hard loss, but like, let's think about this. Finland wins bronze. They get a stuffed animal. I guarantee you Finland loved their stuffed animal because they ended on a loss.
Yeah, and Slovakia was probably upset.
I think it was just the expectations. Canada doesn't get the win. No stuffy. It's whatever. But if that's me, I'm keeping that damn thing. It's going right on my shelf next to my silver medal that I won at the Olympics.
Yeah, that was the only thing after the Jack Hughes goal. That's the only thing I could care about for the rest of the broadcast was watching them get their stuffed animal, because you've got Nathan McKinnon, you got Connor McDavid, you even have Sidney Crosby out there. Somebody's gonna make a face. Of course, it's Nathan McKinnon, and that was great. It was peak television in my opinion.
And it's funny too because you have to handshake. Was it the double IHF president or something like that? Like you have to be all official, and then he hands you a damn stuffed animal after you just lost the biggest game of your life, man. Like, jeez,
crazy.
That's funny.
I'd say probably solid on the men's side. I'd say 10 out of 25 made it.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, Parker, 2028 World Cup of Hockey. Let's talk about John Cooper. Is this still his job, or do you think we see a shift?
Unless something crazy happens over the next few years, I think he still does have the job. And I'll be honest, I didn't find his management to be too much of a problem. I think team selection was part of it. The way that they're built, especially with the players that they have available, I think is part of it as well. And I think if you put a guy like Sidney Crosby on the ice in that game, they still walk away with it. And I think part of it too is it's the difference between the final score and the way that they played. And I think that they can be happy walking away from that tournament with the way they played. I know a lot of people, and I'm sure you guys are probably about to say the other way, but I personally don't think that loss necessarily falls on John Cooper.
Yeah,
I think more so it's you play that game again, you probably end up with a win. It's just unfortunately the dominoes didn't fall in that one in an Armageddon line, which you expect to perform and you need to perform if you want to win. Just couldn't quite get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have much complaints about John Cooper.
No,
I don't think really. It sounded like he only had a couple spots that he got to decide on for this roster, anyways. So really, it just came down to coaching and lines and all that, and really the only mismanagement I think would have been Sam Reinhart in the end. I think you did what you could do with the defense, and Jordan Minnington's there, so you got to run him out. So really, I think Sam Reinhart, which is only one player, I think he did a good job and put Canada in a good spot to succeed. So what do you think, Jake?
I mean, who knows? Maybe if John Cooper had 2 of his Lightning players that are supposed to be there, we'd be cheering for gold right now because he loves his Lightning. So I don't know. I didn't have a problem with John Cooper at all. I think he should be back in 2028. He's obviously very successful in the NHL.
Unbelievable this year too,
exactly, right?
He's going to be around for a long time. So.
Absolutely. So he should still be here. Okay, let's get into I'll name it like standouts. We'll call it standouts. I'm going to say MVP, but I'd hope you guys agree that I think the MVP was Connor McDavid just for the production he had this tournament. But let's talk about standouts. And actually, I'm just going to name a player. I want to get some thoughts. Macklin Celebrini, man, 19 years old, has one heck of a tournament. Did he lead the team in goals? Is that correct?
Did. I think
he
so.
did. Okay, I'll start with you. I know you're a big Macklin Celebrini guy.
Yeah.
What a tournament from the kid.
I think Macklin Celebrini, just to jump on Parker's point earlier, saying they're going to, not an overhaul of Hockey Canada, but the fact that he, as a 19-year-old, over-succeeded every expectation already proves to Hockey Canada that they got to make a change. They got to find younger players in that roster. 11 out of 10. He was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. What about you, Parker?
Yeah, kind of add on to that, right? There's very little to complain about his game from this tournament because he was probably one of the best, if not the best, maybe Connor McDavid, I guess. But you look at the way that they played, and that was a difference maker for this Canadian team. When they were going, they won, right? And when they started to get a little colder, they struggled a little bit more. And so I think ultimately you look to your key players in those key games, and unfortunately just couldn't quite get the job done in the end. But for a guy like Celebrini, a great tournament from him, and one that I'm looking forward to seeing as these years go onwards, right? Where it's kind of the handing of the torch. We've seen Crosby, of course, for so many years, kind of hand it down now to McDavid, McKinnon, Celebrini, Bedard. We're going to see Makar, McKenna, who knows, maybe in a few years as well, where it's going to be somewhat of a similar conversation where their young team going to start to rise, and we're going to see what the Canadians can do into the future because the future is bright. And I think in the end, it's going to come down to a few different depth key role players that could very well shape this Canadian team, but they have a lot of talent coming. So I don't think it's too much of a concern, at least on the men's side.
Yeah, I love this tournament. I think as a 19-year-old, his expectations were obviously, we know from what we've seen in the NHL that he could take over a game. He's an exceptional skater, puck handler, but he played his role just to a T, just got to the right areas, didn't try to do too much. And you don't have to try to do too much when you're playing with Connor McDavid down the middle. Just let McDavid control the narrative, get to the open spots, and rip the pill. And that's exactly what he did. He led the team in goals. So I loved it. I agree with everything you guys said. He's going to be but could he potentially be the number one setter 2030?
Celebrini?
Yeah.
100%.
100% over McDavid, yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
So.
Only time will tell. So, yeah, interesting. Okay. Any other talking points that you guys want to go over with just about the entire tournament at all? Caleb, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, Connor Hellebuck was the one that beat us, and I think the one thing Canada lacks has been goaltending. I know we had 3 decent goaltenders, but after that, it kind of falls off. And early and overall, even just Hockey Canada standpoint on the men's side, the development of goaltenders needs to be better, clearly. I know you always have 1 or 2 in the hopper every draft year, but obviously they don't develop for another 5 or 6 years until the NHL. I think apparently I don't exactly have the stat in front of me or the analytic, but apparently the goaltending numbers in youth hockey is declining big time in Canada. So
nice.
2034, we might have an AHL goalie. That's my prediction. So just throw it out there.
Okay.
What about you, Parker? Do you have a final thought the entire tournament?
I always find it amazing, and you guys know as well, but the fact that every single one of these tournaments tends to come down to one goal that completely reshapes an entire tournament. And you think in the case for the Swedes, you think in the case for the Slovaks, that one goal at the end of the game with the goalie pulled, or on the power play, they didn't even get to the goalie pulled, was the difference between the Swedes going and playing for a medal and the Swedes being knocked out in the quarters again and nearly knocking out the gold medalists in the U.S. And it's always fun to see because even for teams like Latvia and Denmark, where Latvia pulls their goaltender, if they wait it out, Denmark probably pulls their goaltender, and you see kind of that battle go. And so 1 point or 1 goal can be the difference in an entire tournament. And that's the beauty of international hockey, is the way that they structure these tournaments is at some point goal differential does come into play, and now it's just a matter of seeing which team comes out on top of that.
It's a lot. The international hockey is always so fun, man. You got a lot of. I mean, the prelims really there wasn't many crazy games. You have the Slovakia-Finland game to start, and then you've got Germany losing to Latvia, I believe. But then every game after that in the playoff, basically, just unbelievable. Like 10 out of 10, no notes. You have Sweden pushing USA to 2-1. Like that's just international hockey, and it's a lot of fun. Like it's just a lot of fun for sure.
Okay, I got one final question. I know he said final thoughts. It's just quick. Make the answers brief, but it's a big one. Sidney Crosby, he's in the lineup, 100% healthy. Team USA, gold medal game. Does Canada win?
Parker, you go first. Yeah. Yes. Okay. I would say. It's tough, man. What do you think? I got to think still.
I'm going to say yes. I think in a championship game like that, there's no better guy you'd want in your lineup than Sidney Crosby.
I would say no.
Wow, okay.
I don't know if Sidney Crosby 100% healthy would push them over. That's just my thought. He's 38. Like, I know he had a good prelims, but like, he's still 38 years old, guys. So
that's true.
I don't know. I mean, he still might have the clutch factor. We haven't seen him like he hasn't won a cup since 2017 either. Like, I know he's still chugging along and is a great player in the NHL, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can see it. So
okay,
it comes down to power plays for me. Like you look at the chances that they had. Crosby's on that instead of Celebrini. As much as Celebrini had a great tournament, he hadn't had the reps with that power play unit, and I think that was one of the biggest differences. Is as soon as the puck went down below the goal line, it typically ended up back in Canada's end because just couldn't quite have that same crispness. So I think that was for me the biggest difference maker.
Or even you boot Reinhardt off that and move Celebrini up there and have Crosby up there too. So there's options if he's in there, but
yeah, what it could have been.
Yeah,
what it could have been, boys. I guess we'll never know. Good episode. That will do it for today's episode of the True North Ice podcast. Parker, please take some time and plug as much stuff as you can, man. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so we call ourselves the home of international hockey, and cover all things international hockey, same as the boys here, but more so on the international side, so less biased Canada, and we try our best to be impartial, which is extremely difficult, but we do a bunch of different day recap videos, team previews, predictions, preview for tournaments as well. All 5 of the big tournaments. We are launching our podcast over the next few days, which will be covering a little bit more of the lower level tournaments, so Division 1A down to Division 4, and so be sure to come check us out. We'll be rolling out a bunch of different international content over the next few months. U18s, April 22nd, big deal for that. And then, of course, the Men's World Championships, May 15th, going to be a great run for the international side.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. That has been Parker of On the Fly. Richard and Ice, remember, check out our social media, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. We're posting still daily, bunch of content. Obviously still surrounding the Olympics. We're still wrapping it up, Kale. Probably take a couple more weeks before we stop posting Olympic content. It's just all the buzz right now. So we got to keep you updated. So follow us there. As always, all your favorite podcast platforms. We're still uploading 2 podcasts a week, Kale. Still busy, still grinding. Kale, where can they find the podcasts?
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Amazon Music. There's a gazillion more. I don't know at this point, but there's a lot.
Oh yeah,
iHeartRadio.
Don't forget about that.
Shout out.
That's your favorite.
Radio. Not my favorite, but it's always a good one. So
yeah. Perfect. For Jacob Ewing, Caleb Snyder, and our special guest today, Parker McLean. Thank you for joining us. We've been the True North Ice Podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.